Hello and welcome to the SFCA podcast. Our goal is to inspire travel. We want to expose you to what Miami and South Florida has to offer. From Key Biscayne to Coconut Grove, South Beach to Calle Ocho and everywhere in between. Miami is a vibrant city and offers a wide array of popular attractions and venues. Come join us. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Just waiting for our numbers to increase. Good morning, Hydrick. Good morning, Hilda. Good morning, Irene. Good morning, Federico. Brian. Giselle, Hilda, Iman, Jacob, Jody, Lexi, Lena, Mildred, Nashley. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We'll be starting shortly. Just want to make sure everybody's on the call. As of this morning, we had 97 RSVPs, so we have about 40 on the call so far. So we're almost at the halfway mark. I'll wait 30 more seconds, and I'll go ahead and get started. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start. Welcome, everyone. Spring is almost over. Amazing weather with the exception of yesterday and today. We're at the tail end of spring, gearing up for F1, coming up May 5th through the 7th. Thank you for joining us. We truly appreciate your continued support. A special recognition to all the sales teams, hotel managers, and sports staff that are on the call. For those of you joining us for the first time, welcome to the call. We share facts, figures, and stats on South Florida tourism. We also have some entertaining and informative facts that we hope you'll enjoy. Today, we have some interesting facts on fitness, as well as data and travel information, both in the hotel market and the shared home space. I want to ensure that everybody's familiar with the chat feature. It is active right now. I just want to make sure the chat is running for everyone. Allow me a second. Okay. So everyone should be able to chat with me and chat with each other. If you want to just go ahead and chat just to make sure it's open, go ahead. Okay, so everyone should be able to chat. And if you have any questions for any of the speakers, by all means, use the chat feature or the Q&A. Thank you, Jose. Thank you, Elba. We got you. And you can do it during the presentation or after the presentation, as long as we're within the midst of the show. Today, we got some great merchandise. After Andrew's presentation, we're going to give away a $50 gas card, which is becoming a commodity, more so than eggs nowadays. Price of gas will be going up once again by Memorial Day. You should probably be seeing $4.50 gas by all means. Wow. If you've never done this before, again, all you have to do is listen to the question, be the first one to give the right answer via the chat, and you win. We'll send you the chat. We'll send you the $50 gift card electronically, either via Zelle or Cash App, and then and you enjoy it. Okay. I want to introduce our panel today. We've got Andrew Wobensmith from the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau. We also have special guest Megan Buzales, Business Development Manager of OTA Insight, and Pastor Lopez, Head Trainer at We 202. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Pastora. Good morning, Pastora. How are you?
Hi, guys. Good morning. My name is Pastora Lopez, and I'm the Head Trainer at We 202. Is it on?
Yeah. You're on.
Okay, so We 202, it's something completely innovative and unique in its form. It's a type of workout that uses technology, and the technology that we use is called EMS. It stands for electrical muscle stimulation. It's our body itself. Every time we move or perform a task, we produce EMS in our brain, and it sends a signal to our muscles, and it contracts. It's a voluntary contraction. So the technology that we use, that's called EMS, it's an involuntary contraction. So everybody in our studios, we have 2 studios in South Florida. Our first studio, it's in Pembroke Pines. It's been 6 years since the moment that we opened, and it's been very successful, changing people's life in a way of the way we train and exercise in a faster way. We live a fast life. People don't have the, okay.
Oh, no, we just have to start the PowerPoint.
Okay. Oh, I thought it was,
No.
that's what I was asking. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. So we're gonna start a quick video so you see an
Yeah, so
overview of
you
what we
see-
do, and then
you
we'll go
see-
into the details
yes.
of what she was talking about, okay?
Excellent. Go ahead.
All right. So,
Now we don't have audio. So you install these electronic devices or the suit on top of you in order for the workout?
okay, so there's a quick video that shows like class in motion on what we do. It's a quick workout. So as I was saying earlier, we have two studios in South Florida. The first one that we opened, it's in Pembroke Pines, and it's been 6 years since the moment we opened. And recently we opened a studio in Aventura area. And like I was saying, we are all based on EMS, electrical muscle stimulation. So literally is technology applied to muscle contraction it's a faster, effective way of exercise, of strength training. Within 20 minutes, the person wears a suit, which is an EMS or wireless EMS suit that's given an involuntary contraction on all the pads on the suit. The suit has 20 pads, and is all wireless, controlled by the trainer, by a certified trainer, and it sent an impulse resistant signal that makes contraction on 85 muscle per second. So it's very effective in the way if it trains our body. Training 350 muscles in 20 minutes, literally, the person needs to spend hours at the gym, strength training, knowing what to do, probably hiring personal training and go multiple times during the week. And here is so effective the way strength training of our body that only twice a week is needed, no more than that. So we have our classes are 20 minutes workout, and the person starts seeing the results, getting stronger, leaner. It helps a lot with the fat loss, stimulates blood flow, and increase metabolism for that sake. So it's very effective and improve our health overall, because today's day is more awareness of fitness is not just for physical appearance, it's more as we aging. We need it more and more, that muscle density, that muscle mass to help us with our balance, with our everyday, to avoid injury. This technology that we use is the latest technology. It's all wireless, and it gives the freedom of movement. So our classes are in a fraction of a time, like it says in there, because you don't need hours at the gym. You only need 20 minutes, and it's always with a certified EMS trainer. So it's very simple. It's very accommodative for a person that has a hectic lifestyle. We all work and has family and responsibility, and literally we don't have the time, and we don't have the sometimes the commitment to go and do the gym for hours. A lot of people don't know how, and this is a perfect tool that's going to get the job done in just 2 sessions. It's very efficient. And it's absolutely customized to every client. Everybody could be it all ages. Originally, when we started it in our wellness center, we were inside of the doctor that owns the studio had a wellness center, and we originally opened a little studio inside the wellness center, and we were catered to much older crowd. But then we noticed that the benefits for fitness apply to all. So everybody, person that's into fitness, person that have never worked out in their life, anybody gets benefits. So we have a little comparison table here. You need about 120 minutes to just do 30 minutes of EMS. And 2 sessions a week, you will, like I said before, you will have to literally go to the gym almost every day for 45 minutes. On a conventional training, you burn 400 calories. Here, depend on the effort of the person and the intensity of the customized connection on the suit. We say between 500 to 750 calories. It's absolutely free of risk. We don't do any HIIT training. We don't do any type of workout like other caterers of fitness that they do more intense on the body. It's all low of it's very low the risk of injury, and it's all strength training on the muscle tissue, as well as stimulate the lymphatic drainage, which are all a lymph node in our body, and it helps for that system to work more efficiently days after we do one session of the EMS training. So it's 100% wireless. It's operated by a little box, and there is no risk of anybody having a back connection or injuries. And we can do different classes, different modality of training, even though the connection is always a strength training. With that, we have cardio classes, which help to speed up the fat loss in the body, and it's a great combination. And the location in Pembroke Pines, it's on a main street on Pines Boulevard, and so is the one in Aventura. It's Biscayne Boulevard as well. So yes, we are able to go and pop up different location and do small group sessions and train, customize the clientele.
Cool. So it's you can mobile. You can.
Yes, we do mobile as well.
Cool.
Yes.
All right, real quick. So you've mentioned the ages. All ages are available. Different body types. Doesn't make a difference if you're.
No, it doesn't make a difference.
No?
We have suits from extra small to 2XL.
Excellent. And then what about if someone is pregnant? Is that the deterrent if you're pregnant?
Yes, definitely not for pregnancy.
Okay.
And definitely no for mothers that are lacting babies as well. So there are a few contraindications that the EMS doesn't apply to, especially expecting mothers.
Understood. So that would be under restrictions. Then comfort level, is it like a shock? Do you feel any discomfort while you're working out? Or?
No. Have you guys ever gone to a chiropractor or sport medicine for rehab after surgery? EMS existed over 100 years, really.
Okay. And
it's been applied for medical field for that length of the time, for over 100 years. They use it after orthopedic surgeries, after injuries. They use it for rehab. And within the last, a little over 10 years, they see all the benefits that has for recovering, for tissues, for tendon, for ligaments. But they saw that on patients that has no mobility, is strength training the muscles, and they have big improvement. So seeing those great results on all those patients, they say, why don't we apply it for healthy people for workout? And the result is absolutely amazing, because strength training with EMS is way more effective than when we do it on our own with our own ability, because of the technology is applied to the muscle tissue and is very effective.
Understood. So real quick, we're running short on time. Is this per class? Is it membership driven? Can someone go in and try it on a
Yes.
on a
We
trial basis?
Yes, we have free trials because it's important
Okay.
for everybody to experience. And we have membership or packages. It all depends to what the clients need.
Okay, perfect. If you want to share that with us, and again, if you want to share that package information, you're more than
Okay.
welcome to do so, or they can come in and see it. Again, you're at Pembroke Pines on Pines Boulevard, as well
Yes.
as Aventura on Biscayne Boulevard.
Yes.
So fairly local to most of us.
Yes.
Pretty cool. I
Yes.
may give it a try. Thank you very
You
much,
should
Pastor. You're very
all
informative and
try
educated.
it. You should all try it. There is no
No,
excuse
definitely.
anymore that I don't have the time and I don't know how to do it. This has come, and I'm very excited that we are the pioneers. We're the first in the whole US in implementing all wireless EMS.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That is
Yes.
certainly a feat. Congratulations.
Yes. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you very much. If anyone has any questions, by all means, send it through the chat. They will stay on the call. I'm going to segue over to Andrew right now. Andrew, are you ready to partake in the call? Hold on. I did get one while he's doing that. Lena, because every season is swimsuit season in South Florida. Indeed. You're right. Got to look good in those swimsuits. Thank you very much, Pastora. Andrew, are you ready,
You're
sir?
welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I'm
Andrew,
ready.
you
you
are
see my
on. For
screen?
those of you that have not joined us, yep, I see the screen perfectly. This is the man that has all the facts and figures, and today he's being complimented by someone else all the way from Colorado, but she's joining us here this morning. But first, the man of the hour, Andrew Wobensmith from the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau. Andrew, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Miguel, for your kindness. I appreciate being here every month. Great to be here. And also, I want to say, running into a lot of you at our different functions is really great. It's very encouraging and makes me happy knowing that the information that we're putting together goes to good use. I'll say we were talking before we came on today, and we were talking about how this was all started, and I was not a part of this when this call started back in April 2020. But I will say, back in April 2020, the challenges of my job just became so much different. The real challenges were getting information that was really useful and up to date. So that was the challenge that we started experiencing back in 2020, was what is the information that's most up to date, that's most relevant for the people, our stakeholders, in order for them to make decisions. And so that's how it's kind of guided our research department. And so I really like it when we're on here every month, because that's what you're looking for. That's all people want. You don't want noise, right? You want signal, as they say. So every month, what I try to do is just give you the signal and not the noise. So with that said, it is April 2023. It's hard to believe that we're already into Q2, right? I mean, for those of us that are nerds or looking at data, it's Q2 now, it's not April. So there's a lot of things going on. I'll try to cut a little bit short here because I know Megan's got an awful lot of information that's all going to also be very useful to you. So with that said, let's move forward here. Let's see. Okay, well, U.S. travel, they provide some updates that I oftentimes share with you. So none of this is going to probably be a surprise here, but what they're saying is that consumer spending is going to probably weaken later this year. Income gains are softening. Our savings are starting to run dry. Extra money is not really there like it used to be. The cost to borrow money, which would include credit card debt, is going up. And again, inflation, as we all are aware of, they're all taxing our pocketbooks, and that will translate potentially into travel as things move on this year. However, they make some note that the labor market still looks pretty good, still appears to be jobs out there. So that is an encouraging factor. Although there is some slide in number of job openings more recently, and we'll talk about that in a moment here. But what they say here, I think is most important, is I bolded the line. As long as the job market remains robust and incomes are steady, then consumers will have money to spend. And I think that's really just what it really comes down to. And that even though there's a lot of pressure out there economically, the prices are higher, Americans are still continuing to prioritize experiences they're eager to travel. And even when it comes to business travel, we're seeing that come back. And there's an expectation that with business travel, the meetings and the events, that's going to help us increase our demand or add on to our demand, particularly as we talk about everywhere. But here, of course, what's important is Miami. So we're looking forward to seeing how that's going to play out. We see that early economic data in 2023 looks good. The demand is still healthy. Again, the labor market looks strong. However, there are some things out there that are kind of hanging over our heads. Federal Reserve, as a lot of us have noted, they are continuing to raise hikes. They're saying U.S. travel is saying that this is not really having an impact on growth, but I would probably disagree with that a little bit, more of that in a moment. But what we see here is that there are some issues in the housing market, technology, and banking sectors, and we've obviously heard about this. There was a bank failure recently. However, the Fed is still expected to continue to raise these rates. They don't really have a lot of choices, quite honestly. They have to try to knock down this inflation. So they really don't have an awful lot of tools. One of their tools is just raising interest rates. So we'll see how that affects us. That said, these economists, including Oxford Economics, they're saying, yeah, we still expect a recession, although that might not be as soon as we thought it was going to be. And it looks like they're saying it could be later this year. So speaking of jobs, ADP, we know about ADP, they're a payroll company. They're saying that that some of the job expectations were missed, that the private sector hiring has decelerated. So that is another sign that economically we are potentially heading into a recession. So we did miss the jobs numbers last month by the estimates. They mentioned that annual pay rose in March and down from 7.2. That's great, but I can always share with you and any of you that follows economics, pay doesn't rise at the same level as inflation. Inflation of goods and prices it's faster than our paychecks. So really, it just takes a while. The inflation's double digits from 2 years ago. So our pay is not quite caught up yet. So while it's good that it's catching up, it's still not quite there. And they make a note here I thought was really interesting because, and if you've been coming to this call for several months now, I've talked about how we're seeing this growth and where we think it's coming from in terms of the demand for travel. In the pandemic, our spending, the way we allocated our dollars was more towards goods. We bought goods, sofas, cars, the rest, workout equipment. As we were stuck at home, we spent less on those services, of which travel is a service. So what we see happening is the momentum in terms of our travel, a lot of that has been spurred by changing the way we spend our money, going away from goods, which are actually more expensive now, if you think about it, right? Getting that new couch or bicycle has now become more expensive. So we've switched back to more services. And again, travel is one of those things. So what they point out here is that the job growth that we've seen has been split between services and goods. They were really expecting to see more service jobs, but that was actually not quite as strong as they said that they thought it should be. However, that said, they make a note, and this is one of the reasons why I'm sharing this, that leisure and hospitality has been adding jobs. So what they saw, almost 100,000 workers come back into leisure and hospitality over the last month. So, and so I'd say those are good signs. We don't really know necessarily what's going to net out or how it really matters here, but I think it's important to try to read the tea leaves and see what direction we're going in. And of course, jobs are very, very, very important for both us as well as our visitors who are going to, obviously need that extra income in order to travel here. And as I'll just finally say here, this quote at the bottom, our March payroll data is one of several signals that the economy is slowing. Employers are pulling back from a year of strong hiring and pay growth. After a 3-month plateau, it's now inching down. And I'll mention this, and I'll share this because I was really kind of, I don't know if shocked is the word. I'm not really surprised or necessarily shocked, but some of these things we don't hear about. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to share this, because I've heard nobody talking about bankruptcy right now. And this came out and I thought, oh my Lord, and it comes from this company, American Bankruptcy Institute. They probably know more about bankruptcy than I do. So what they're saying here is that we are seeing a huge surge in bankruptcies in the United States in terms of small businesses. That's very, very important. Our economy is made up of 50% of our businesses are small businesses. So what they're seeing here is they're seeing a very big increase year over year in bankruptcy filings. And that is concerning. I would worry about that. And some of those reasons why, there are a number of different reasons why, but they say here, and some of these we could probably understand, right? Like they mentioned real estate. Well, we know what's going on in real estate right now. It's certainly in a depression. And of course, people who are relying upon the real estate industry are seeing things, not go to their advantage. They mentioned healthcare, chemicals, and retail outlets. And we just talked about retail, talked about goods. So, as people switch away from goods, these companies that sell goods are obviously not going to be doing as well as they were. fear of a credit crunch, right? And that's really where I think the heart of this is. And they mentioned that credit conditions are tightening. And so with that said, that really does hurt. That really does hurt small businesses who really particularly rely upon that credit and the costs associated with that credit in order to keep their businesses floating. And again, and this person at the bottom of my quote, we believe one of the more underappreciated signs of distress in U.S. corporate debt is already emanating from the small and mid-sized enterprises sector. The smallest of firms are facing the most severe pressure from rising rates, persistent inflation, and slowing growth. And I'll just mention too, real briefly, I have a friend that works in a banking industry. He runs a bank branch up in Virginia. That's one of those smaller branches. And I sent this to him, and he was able to tell me. He said, actually, their bank, they said they stopped lending, all new lending, like 3 months ago, which I thought was really interesting because I didn't really hear that, and I don't work in the banking sector. I asked him why, and it was basically the same reasons: is that they just don't feel comfortable about lending at this point in time, and that the demand isn't necessarily there as well because, again, the credit has become more expensive for these small, medium-sized businesses. Oops, let's see, going backwards here. Well, this survey by Donata, it's a global study of consumers. And so I pulled out the USA and then some of our top visitor markets because this is what's relevant. And the question was, which of the following are most important to you personally? And as to be expected, rising prices and inflation followed by crime, climate change is a big concern for a lot of people. These are what's on their minds. We do see some differences across the world here. And I've sorted based upon what we see in the United States, but you can see some differences. While everybody seems to have similar, some are more pronounced than others. It looks, for example, I'll point out here that across these countries in USA, there's other countries are much more concerned about the war in Ukraine, as an example that we are. But all of us are facing issues around rising prices and inflation. We're all basically saying this is our number one issue. So these are the things that our potential travelers are facing. And as we look at these different markets, we have to understand where they're at economically, not just about if they want to go, but can they actually afford to come to our market, and what are those barriers that keep them from coming here? So for a lot of it, it is still certainly rising prices and inflation. Another thing here by U.S. travel, they mentioned that the United States remains the top travel destination, but the competition is threatening our growth. And what do they mean by that? Is that the percentage of travelers choosing the United States as a top destination to visit has dropped. Okay, dropped, especially from 2015. And they're seeing that travelers are having more interest in some of these other countries right now than they did, such as Mexico, Canada, Spain, the United Arab Emirates. And what they say, it's not even economics. They say the worst part about it are the visa issues that we have. We've talked about visa issues in the last several months. And in some cases, they're not improving, they're getting worse. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that while we're processing more visas, there's actually a greater demand for travel. So there are more and more people who want to travel. So they're coming in, they're trying to get visas as well at the same time that other people are trying to get visas. And so, as they mentioned here, about half of international travelers originating in non-visa waiver countries, they say visa issues are a reason as to not visit the United States ahead of cost. So again, as I've mentioned, consumers are really worried about cost, but even more so, it's the visa issue. And so some of these other countries are trying to solve these issues in order to get their share of the pie. I'm not going to go through everything down here at the bottom, but they have steps such as the UK. They removed visa requirements for citizens of Colombia, Peru, and Guyana. And so, it has to beg the question, are people in Colombia and Peru, would they be potentially more likely to travel to a place like UK if they're having issues getting a visa coming here to the United States? So some food for thought. Let's look at some social media sentiment. I love this stuff, as you well know if you come to this, because there's one thing to look at news, but I really want to know what people are saying online. And so what we see here is that there was some negative activity going on, but there's also some positive improvement. Last month's conversations were often negative and volatile. However, that's slowing, and we probably know why that is. The top drivers of this were related to spring break and some political nature. People talked about the police presence, efforts to reduce partying in Miami Beach. However, I think a lot of that has gone away, or as we say sometimes, the memory hole, right? We are always constantly being exposed to information, but how long it is that we retain that. And that's one of the great things about social media data mining is that you can see just how often people are talking about these things and when the volume of that conversation starts to drop off. And usually it's pretty fast. So down at the bottom here, I'll note that recent spikes in negative conversations were largely attributed to some of the weekend violence that we saw, but they're fading. However, these conversations were mostly spread by news outlets. And why that was important to me when I read that was, well, what I'm probably most concerned about are what are those organic mentions? What are those people that are coming, like these people here in this picture to the right, these young ladies here on their trip? Everybody looks at information and follows people for their information. So the question is, what really matters to them? Is it an article on Axios or Bloomberg, or is it their friends that are here in Miami on a trip? And so just putting it out there for food for thought. I think we're through some of that trouble that we have with Miami Beach, although there's definitely some leftover sentiment that may not be positive. But the good news is, after some of these issues that we had last month, it appears that this stuff is starting to subside. Just want to mention, I almost mentioned this last month, we didn't have time, but Brightline, as a lot of us know, they are expanding here into South Florida. They've actually already been here, but the big deal here is that they're looking to go to Orlando. They're almost done. So it looks like they could be starting their high-speed rail service as soon as June. Right now, what they're really trying to do, it's almost all complete, but they've got a bridge they're working on in Stewart, and once that bridge is done and gets approval, they should be able to resume. So, and they say here that ideally they're planning to ultimately run 32 trains a day between Miami and Orlando. And that, I don't know how I feel about that. I actually don't really like that, because my concern is that, yes, we know that people are going to come to Florida. We know that a lot of people coming to Miami are also going to go to Orlando. That is a very common occurrence for people coming to, especially from out of the country, coming to visit the United States. They're going to split their trip among multiple destinations. So it's not a surprise they're going to go to Orlando, but my problem is, or my question is, will they be staying here longer as opposed to going to Orlando and staying longer? So there's going to be a fight for our share of wallet, maybe something that we're going to do some more research on later this year, and maybe we'll even share some of that with you. Real quickly here, just a snapshot. I've shared a lot of this. I'm not going to go through all of it here. All it really shows us is that when the pandemic started, we saw a lot of visitor arrivals just kind of go to nothing. But unlike other destinations, by mid-2021, that volume of passengers came back so strong that we were basically back to pre-pandemic levels. Down here at the bottom comes from origin and destination markets. And looking here, what I want to mention here, 2019 shows that split of what would be international and domestic. And we can see here that international was almost 48%. We've always said 50-50. That's about what our markets have been through air. But we saw in 22 that actually that mix has obviously been disturbed from the lack of international visitation, was down to 34%. Then we see 2023 to date, we're looking at about 41-42% international. So we are coming back, not quite to where we were in 2019, but the international volume is definitely coming back, and we are getting there. Real quickly here, and I can't share this when I share this deck, because I'm not even sure if I can share this with anybody here, but I'm just going to do it anyway. This came to me. This is a dashboard that comes in for MIA. What this really shows is like their plan, their snapshot of what's planned in terms of capacity to the airport. Where do they think things are coming? Do they see the volume of allocated seats going up or down? And what we see here, and the reason I'm sharing this here, is to show you that what's going on at MIA right now, things are really, really strong. But compared to a year ago, we're starting to see them start to inch down a little bit. There are less and less seats. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that last year was so incredibly strong. We're comparing to a very strong period. If you look at some of the other markets, they're picking up a lot. Orlando, a few others. So really, I don't want to go through a lot of time here, but what we see here is that the growth has been tremendous at MIA and has maybe started to taper off a little bit. Again, talking about that growth and that seat capacity, this is a snapshot of what it looks like from an international perspective coming into our airport for the next 3 quarters here. And what I've done is I'm showing you the volume of seats, but also the percent change from the last time that we spoke, to show you have things really changed since last month. And there are some little changes here and there. It looks like they're dialing back on capacity to Colombia, but at the same time, and a little bit from Brazil as well. We know about Brazil, but also if I'm looking further out, something interesting that I don't understand, maybe you do, is that in Peru, for seats coming in from Peru, they actually are bumping that up for the end of the year. So, what that means, I'm not sure, but it may mean that they're expecting to see a boost from Peru towards the end of this year. Cruise updates. All I'm going to say here is that Port Miami and Port Everglades have come back very strong. I can tell you that Port Miami is back and above 2019. Our growth has been tremendous from last year, but really what it's saying here, we're up 10%. Port Everglades behind us, and you can just look through this slide yourself. But what I'm really saying here is that we're both back. Port Miami is stronger right now than Port Everglades. Where I'm happy to say that because we're Miami. We are obviously seeing the lion's share of activity going on at our port. hotel perspective, what I'm doing is I'm sharing the last 28 days. I'm going to show here Miami-Dade County, occupancy, ADR, and RevPAR, as well as the rest of the state as we carve it up. And then at the bottom is the United States to give you an idea of how hotels are performing here and really what are really our main competitors right now. And that would be other areas inside of Florida. And we can see that occupancy is a little bit down. A lot of this is related to supply, but where we see what really stuff that sticks out to me is Miami-Dade County. We already saw huge rate growth. We saw this demand pick up not long after the pandemic started and people started to travel again. So now we're on the tail end of that, while some of these other areas are picking up a lot more. Orlando was one that I noticed their rates are getting higher. So that's what's really going on right now, is that we're not in the growth phase as some of these others or recovery phase. We're further along than a lot of other destinations, both in Florida and outside of Florida. Looking at this demand for the next 30 days, and I share this every month, we see here, and what we saw for months and months that has changed here is that we're not seeing the short-term demand. We saw very, very short-term demand for the first 3 months of this year, but then further out, very weak. Right now, what we're seeing is a change. We're seeing that short-term demand has started to fall, and I've taken those orange bars are what we're going to see during Formula One right now. And whether it's good or bad, we're not seeing the pickup here. And this is a sample of hotels, not necessarily if you're a hotel, you're your hotel. But what we're seeing here is we're seeing demand that's basically on par with what we saw this time last year. And then with home sharing, a little bit below. I've shared this a few times. Again, not going to go through this. If you're a hotelier, I hope you printed this, put this on your refrigerator on your desk, because these were the learnings that we had from last year's Miami Formula One. And the learning here is that while both Miami and Fort Lauderdale saw really great gains in ADR and RevPAR, where we really suffered, I hate to say suffered, is that when we looked at our rates were so high that we believe we drove a lot of demand up to Fort Lauderdale. And you can see there that bottom line, the comparison in 2019, we lost a lot of demand. We left business on the table, as some people would say. But meanwhile, in Fort Lauderdale, they saw double-digit growth in demand. So they were able to capitalize potentially on the prices that we think were an issue for some. And then looking further out, this is probably one of the biggest things I can share with you this month, is that, as I was mentioning to you, that short-term demand was what we saw, and then further out was really weak. That's what that top chart really says. But that bottom chart is saying, no, actually now what we're seeing is that longer-term demand is picking up. And if you look to that table to the right there, you see a comparison, what we saw last month and this month. And while we saw things basically in the red last month for further out, now we're actually seeing a big comeback. So April was down 9%, but then May 3%, and the summer is flat, and we'll take flat. And even places like September and end of the year are actually looking really strong. So I wanted to share that. That's probably some of the best news that I can share with you today. Finally, and I know that we're running a little short on time, what I'll say here, economic signals, as I mentioned, they're mixed, but activity for travel, desire for travel is still there. We do believe a recession is still coming this year. Airlines are feeling confident, but maybe some of these issues that our international travelers had could continue to be a deterrent. Our hotel performance here in Miami-Dade County, not quite as high as last year. We expected that, but we see that other neighboring destinations are also competing for the pie as well. And finally, as I just mentioned, booking pace is dropping short term, but further out has now started to look really good. And that's it.
Excellent. Real quick, I'm sure you answered it, Andrew. The RevPAR, is it still the same, or is it
RevPAR? Well, for Miami, RevPAR falls a little bit. It's a function of occupancy and ADR. So both those measures go into what really becomes RevPAR. With a little bit of decrease in occupancy and the rates not being as strong, we see a corresponding decrease in RevPAR.
Got it. All right. It's time to get the question that everyone's waiting for, and the lucky winner will get a $50 gas card. Andrew, you ready with your question?
Yes, I am.
Right.
I mentioned Brightline. How many trips does Brightline anticipate having daily?
32?
Yeah, 32.
32. And Patricia Santos, you are the lucky winner.
Right on.
Excellent. Congratulations, Patricia. You we'll reach out to you or reach out to us, and we'll get you that gas card. You're right. 32 trips a day. Do you think they're all heading north? Or you think they'll be north and south?
Well, we would hope that
Well, you can only get so much of Mickey Mouse.
We would hope they would come here more often. Of course, they have to go one way and the other way, but
True.
I think that we hope that they would stay here longer.
True. I was in shock to see how much the rates of Disney have gone up. It is expensive to go to Disney.
Yeah.
Wow.
It really is.
It is. And now you still have to make the reservation. It's not an open format yet. It's very, very interesting. All right. So if you enjoy what Andrew provides, thank you very much, Andrew, for your information. No questions on the deck. So we will move on to our next speaker. If you enjoy what Andrew does, you're definitely going to enjoy what Megan does, because Megan's not only going to encompass the hotel side, but she's also going to be talking about the shared home. Today, we bring you live from Colorado, a different time zone altogether, but have a vast information, OTA insight. I introduce you to Megan Busales. Megan?
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me today. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes, your screen's
Okay.
perfect. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Just wanted to make sure that came through. Thank you so much for having me. I am going to expand a little bit on what Andrew was speaking about related to the Miami market and conditions. It's very interesting to hear how much you guys have going on with this change that you guys have coming up with expansive routes of travel. It actually worked out really well for me to follow up after Andrew. I think this is going to give you a really nice full scope insight on the market and what you guys can expect to see this year. So really what I'm going to be doing here is talking through some of Miami's market conditions based on our tools and the data that we collect. So I wanted to start with just giving you a picture of who we are. I imagine many people on the call are familiar with OTA Insight, but wanted to just first start out with giving you a visual of our commercial platform and how we partner with hotels, brands, and management companies. So our tools have really been developed around one need for a multi-use system, and our customers have told us that it has become their most utilized tool to navigate recovery. So this is going to give you kind of a beginning to end scope of our tools and how they're used. Our market insight tool gives predictive market intelligence. So I'm going to be sharing some information today that is actually pulled from this tool. So it's important for me to kind of speak to our tool so you know exactly where the data is coming from that I'm sharing with you today. But our market insight technology uses demand signals in your market to identify demand through pre-booking behavior. So it was very interesting to see Andrew's data from Miami International Airport. I'm going to be sharing some flight data that shifts a little bit and is actually showing these numbers based on booking intent. So it's very interesting to use the two together and actually see that search information, see what travelers are searching for related to flights, and then see how that actually pans out with the completion of the flights. And that's something that I think over the last 2 years has been probably more important to visualize than ever because things are changing so rapidly. So this market insight is going to identify your true competition, as well as we're looking at the full market instead of just focusing on a primary competitive set. So then from here, if anyone knows us, they likely know our rate insight tool. This is our daily go-to rate shopping tool, giving you real-time data. So understanding that many of you hoteliers on this call are changing your rates pretty frequently, hearing about a lot of the events that you have in Miami, you know, I imagine pricing is pretty dynamic. So this allows you to stay on top of your positioning and giving you the ability to shop your comp set at the click of a button. And then tying this all together on the right side, you'll see Revenue Insight is our tool that combines your internal revenue information with all of our price competitive information so that you can best position yourself. So that kind of gives a full scope on who we are. You will notice that throughout here, we do mention transparent. So I will speak to this a little bit throughout some of this data that we acquired Transparent last year, and they specialize in short-term rental data. So we are now able to incorporate that into our tools. And I imagine in Miami, really everywhere in Florida, there's a huge spike in short-term rental accommodations. People are, comparing the two now more than ever. And so being able to incorporate that information into our tools is something we're really excited to do. As I'm sure many on this call know, we partner with many international hotel brands, and we are a trusted partner of some leading hotel management companies, which many on this call might be a part of as well. So just wanted to give a visual of that. And then this just really quickly shows a little bit about our integration partnerships. So we do integrate with a lot of revenue management systems and PMS systems, and we expect to see this expand pretty significantly this year as well. So talking a little bit about what am I going to share with you today, we're going to have 2 different sections all geared up towards helping you understand more about Miami and how the trends stack up against the national averages against a few competitive cities. So national trends versus Miami, we're going to dive into trends that we've seen over the last few years for the US, and we're going to focus on 10 key cities with different dynamics, different population, and markets that will help paint a picture nationally for you. And then in the Miami deep dive, we're going to look at specifics for your market. So looking at length of stay averages, we're going to show you some of the key feeder markets, both internationally and nationally, and then show you some discounting strategies, trends that we've seen as well. So let's start talking about national trends versus Miami. So the first question being, how has pricing changed? I think that's always the big question. It's always changing. It's something we're always needing to stay on top of. So wanted to start with this visual. So this is going to show you looking at last year's data and how we have seen it carry over into 2023. So on this slide, you can see our traditionally more commercial cities, with the exception of San Francisco, which is experiencing a pretty significant downturn due to some external factors, such as reliance on the tech industry workers and such. But the majority of percentages changes are between 10 and 25%. We can see, Miami did very well compared to the average across a lot of these commercial cities. So focusing on business travel, in this next slide, we're going to compare that now to looking at leisure travel. So looking at wider trends, it becomes clear that there's definitely a division in the US hotel industry, with cities that are more reliant on business travel and longer distance arrivals from Asia falling further and further behind cities that are on top of mind for national travelers. So when they're considering vacation spots, as you can see, Miami is following in line with other major US destinations. Something too to keep in mind as we're going through this, we are going to share this deck out, so you're welcome to keep this as a resource. There's a lot of information that we're visually looking at, and I'm sure you might be scrambling to take down this information to share with your teams, but you will have this information as well. So I'll also be sharing out my contact information, so if you have some follow-up questions and want to look at it and discuss it a little bit further, we can, of course, do that. So taking the remainder of 2023 and comparing that to 2019, so we can see that hotel prices posted by commercial destinations in our sample are between 14 to 17%, with the exception of San Francisco, which is continuously seeing being that spectacular outlier. So their prices are down still roughly 2.7% to pre-pandemic levels, which is quite an outlier compared to the rest of the cities we're looking at here. So for the remainder, not far behind the likes of Honolulu, we can see New York is up to 20%, which indicates a relatively solid demand, being projected by hotels across the US. So we can see that Miami fits in with these national trends. You can see we're holding a pretty high percentage here in compared to these other cities. And then looking at the travel industry, it's incomplete without looking at short-term rentals. So as I was talking about before, we now have the opportunity to really expand on the data we're giving you, incorporating the short-term rental information. So we've compiled this together to show you how these markets are transforming and what it may mean for your properties. So when we look at the overall data, you can see that the biggest markets, there is primarily, the bigger markets are growing with short-term rental supply, but however, there is some saturation that we see here. So this is going to be interesting to continue to monitor, because I think, the short-term rental, the desire for short-term rental, I think we're seeing that kind of change pretty drastically. There was a huge draw for it, wanting to steer away from the traditional hotel stay. And now I think we're seeing a bit of a of a comeback. So incorporating the supply and monitoring it is definitely important when we see these trends fluctuate the way that they are. So speaking of the short-term rental information, wanted to speak on how we are incorporating this information into our tools. If anyone wants to talk about this with me separately. So Rate Insight Plus is how we have started to incorporate this information. As you saw in my previous slide, we acquired Transparent that specializes in this data. So now we're excited to be able to incorporate that with the industry's first solution that will combine short-term rental and hotel data into one platform, giving you this large scale visibility. So what this will do is now show you short-term rental rates and occupancy and amenity detail to give you a full scope of exactly how you compare versus your competitor hotels and now competitor short-term rental listings as well. So now putting in a summary of what we just went through, we can see that recovery is strongest in tourism-based markets, which I think speaks greatly for Miami. We can start to see we are seeing strong growth in that short-term rental operators. The supply is definitely increasing. And overall, the trend is that prices are increasing steadily with a few outliers in there. However, we're seeing that trend, which is great for everyone. I imagine on this call that's what our goal is. So let's talk about Miami in a little bit more specific sense here. So when taking a look at feeder markets, it's definitely important to break this down into 3 different categories. So you can see here, we show you top feeder markets for flight searches on the left. And then on the right, we see hotel searches. And then on the bottom, we break down flight searches specific to the GDS. So I know that's important for a lot of you. Any hotelier on this call likely knows exactly who the travelers are when they see GDS reservations come through. We're always analyzing that. So what that means to you, I thought this might mean something different for everybody, but looking at it in a market sense, I think is very interesting. So we can see that the top 5 international markets feeding Miami are Brazil, Canada, Argentina, Colombia, and Chile. I thought this was very interesting to follow up on after seeing Andrew's data. We still are always comparing that international versus national. So breaking that international travel out in this scope is definitely helpful to see country by country. And then when it comes to length of stay breakdowns, so there's definitely a common trend that we see appear here. A longer length of stay for flight data makes sense based off of the data we just looked at for those feeder markets. So while many travelers want to use, Miami International Airport, it doesn't necessarily mean that they want to stay in Miami for their entire trip. So being able to incorporate the flight length of stay information along with hotel length of stay is definitely important because we will typically see a pretty big variance there. So while the flight search breakdowns show a longer length of stay than the hotel search data, when it comes to through hotel traffic, 1 to 3 day length of stay accounts for over 60% of all interest, including over 75% of all interest from the Meta and OTA sites. So that's why we're going to focus on these days when looking at discounting strategies in my next slide here. So now showing some data related to discounts. The trend continues when we look at the number of hotels offering mobile discounts. We only see 1 in every 10 hotels in Miami are offering a mobile discount, with only 1% of those offering a discount over 10%. This is super interesting for me to deliver. It's very different for every market, just because of the traveler that you are targeting. So Miami, I think, I love to talk about markets like Miami just because it's such a dynamic market and there's always typically a lot of thought that goes behind these discounts because it makes a pretty significant impact. But we do see this fairly common in markets that including commercial and tourist-based destinations. So now breaking down length of stay discounting. So that's obviously very important and something that is always a discussion amongst hotels. So we're going to assume based off of the data from the last slide and common industry knowledge that it's best to compare 2 and 3 night length of stay discount strategies. So, based off of this data, Miami is fairly middle of the pack. It looks like pretty spot on in the middle, with the exception of about 7 to 8% of hotels that are offering a discount above 15% for a 3-day length of stay. So all of these numbers seem to be fairly in line with what we've seen in other markets, it doesn't appear that there's a huge difference or notable that shows something, a significant outlier in the Miami market. However, it is great to see this segment breakdown between that 0 and 5% discount, 5 to 15, and greater than 15%. And then looking at discount strategies outside of that length of stay. So when looking at non-refundable versus semi-flex rates, there is a notable difference that I think is worth looking at. So it appears that the discounting strategy on both of these metrics seems to be leading. Miami shows to be one of the more aggressive markets in the country for that pricing. So being able to measure these against each other is definitely a good visual for everybody to see. And kind of wrapping all of that up, I know that we're pretty tight on time and I'm coming right down to the wire. So looking at the big picture, I think there is a opportunity to focus on length of stay for some of those key feeder markets. Definitely continue to monitor some of those summer events. It's been great to hear about some that we have going on right now. The Ultra Music Festival and Formula One we're now discussing. And then aligning your discount strategy with this information. So if anyone wants to take a look at the Miami market one-on-one, we can certainly dive into this together. As I mentioned, we'll share out this deck for you so you can take this information and discuss it with your teams as well. But that wraps up what I have.
Thank you. Excellent. Thank you very much, Megan. Question for you. You had mentioned it to you in your presentation. I just want to get some clarity. Do you see a traffic pattern showing that in-home rentals spiked during COVID and then now are regressing back to the hotel model? Or did they spike, dip, and now are going back to the at-home model or the shared home model?
That's a really great question. I think that's something that definitely changes market by market. Reason being that there's a lot of restrictions that different cities have put in place for Airbnb and Vrbo. Because the market becomes really, really saturated with those listings. Denver is actually one, for example. I know they put a lot of restrictions in for being able to list on Airbnb and Vrbo because of the significant increase during COVID. I think if we looked at it in a more detailed sense, and I was able to pull a few reports, I think we would see maybe some different trends in Miami versus other markets. But the big trend is that we do see the supply continue to increase. That is not something that we have seen decrease.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you very much for your information. As Megan stated, she's going to share the deck with us, and then we will have it in the post notes. Thank you very much. And now we're going straight to South Beach, Ocean Drive with Ceci. Hello, Ceci. How are you? Turn on your microphone.
That is an impressive deck. I would love to get that data as well. It's really informative. And also Andrew is always, our guru on numbers, which people really follow that religiously. So Andrew, thank you for all the work that you do. I know I couldn't wrap my head around all those numbers and do that. We love our partnership with the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau. We did have a spring break here. As you know, there's a phenomenon of a bunch of spring breakers that want to come to South Beach as a rite of passage and beyond the beach and the sand and everything else. And they tend to come out into the park and the street and everything else. I don't know if we've had these activations. Interesting, though, listening to the data on short-term rentals and also the data on bankruptcies, et cetera. I think there's a tipping point to where activations pull away from the industry. So we have to be really careful in curating that March. It's March in Miami Beach, right? People come from all over the world, international people, and they want to stay in the Art Deco district. It is one of the true gems of the world. And because of that, I'm very happy to announce that the World Congress on Art Deco is coming to Miami Beach and will be here April 20th and April 28th. So that is the time, concierges and hoteliers, to push people to take that Art Deco tour. It is one of the biggest activations there is in Miami and Miami Beach. So push people to have that beautiful tour during the time that the World Congress is here. We have our Ocean Drive Promenade music series every single Sunday. It rained yesterday, but we were inside in the Betsy lobby. So it is a really nice place to go when it's raining, because rain or shine, we have this beautiful concert with an elevated music scene that is magical and sweet. It is an hour and a half. Right now we're at 6 because of that we go with the sunset. So we moved it from 5 and now it's at 6. The entire schedule, courtesy of the GMCVB, can be found at www.oceandrivearts.com. So we're very grateful for the GMCVB for hosting that for us. And anything else Ocean Drive, they post there as well. As you know, Ocean Drive is kind of our gem. I know Annabelle, I think, is listening from Lincoln Road. We love that we have the shopping mall area that is with open open cafes. I look forward to the completion of Lincoln Road so people can walk all the way from Smith and Wolenski to the 1111 building without that gap in the middle. So those are kind of urban planning efforts that are being made. And really briefly, I'm not going to go into it. I'll go into it next week or next month, but tickets are already for sale for the Air and Sea Show, May 27 and 28. It is going to follow the pattern of last year and previous years, but this year they are going to be able to do their concert. So please take a look at their website, usasalute.com. I think not very well known. The actual name is National Salute to America's Heroes. So that's why it is usasalute.com, and tickets are on sale for that. And we do expect people, because they have advance notification that there is going to be an Air and Sea show. They will be coming down and staying at our hotels. So please make yourself, educate yourself as to all of the different opportunities for your guests. And I know we are, 2 minutes over. I'm sorry, Miguel. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you, Ceci. We're just a tad bit over, but jam-packed with information. Like as I said, we're going to be sharing the deck with you later on today, if not tomorrow. Thank you to Andrew, Ceci, Pastora, and Megan. Congrats to our winner, Patricia Santos, on the $50 gift card. Very important, April 17th is the INKEY Awards. Hopefully, I'll be meeting a lot of the hoteliers. We will be presenting Concierge of the Year Awards at the Intercontinental Hotel at lunchtime. Also, May 8th, we will be at the JW Marriott Marquis for Concierge Day. That's a great opportunity. And then on May 15th, Monday, May 15th at 10 a.m., we have our next Zoom call. On that call, we will have somebody from Brightline to give us an update on what's happening in June. And I may have some special information about Inter Miami. That's still in the works. So big announcement's going to happen on June 1st. Maybe in our favor, maybe not. We'll soon find out. But that's with Inter Miami Soccer. Until next time, thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day. Have a great week. Stay safe. We'll see you on the 15th. Bye-bye. Take care. Our goal is to inspire travel. We want to expose you to what Miami and South Florida has to offer. From Key Biscayne to Coconut Grove, South Beach to Calle Ocho, and everywhere in between. Miami is a vibrant city and offers a wide array of popular attractions and venues. Come join us.